Have you ever thought about being sponsored in disc golf and never asked yourself how you could possibly do that, or maybe how long that would even take? Well, in today's episode, we talked to Casey Buckey, who shares with us how she became sponsored in disc golf in less than 6 months. And she didn't have 1,000 rating in order to do so. She shares with us how you can have whatever rating there is and find a way to get sponsored by companies in the disc golf space. Casey talks to us about how you can build those relationships with people and companies, because we all know that's super important. She gives some top tips for how you can do the same. And something that not a lot of people think about is, after you do get sponsored, what do you do next? She answers this question and so much more in today's episode. Casey is just like us and is still new to the disc golf space, and she shares with us how you can get sponsored and what kind of content you can be creating that will help sponsors notice you and why they should pick you over new people. Listen through the end of today's episode, and we have such a fun hot take. We actually have two hot takes in today's episode. And is it time to get over the James Conrad legendary shot to win him a world championship? Is it time that we're done seeing that shot? If you're watching on YouTube, comment down below right now if you're tired of seeing that shot, or if you could watch that shot on replay. We really appreciate all the support that you guys have given us recently. Thank you for all the ratings and reviews that are coming in. It looks as though Spotify has a commanding lead right now over Apple Podcasts. So if you're listening to the show, make sure you leave that rating and review. We highly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe today. We put out a really good tip video last week as well as this week. We've got another really good video coming out, so you're gonna want to make sure you hit the subscribe button. But without further ado, let's get into the episode right now.
Hi, my name's Casey Buckey, and you are listening to the Clankers podcast.
Alrighty, everyone, let's welcome on Casey. Super excited to have her in here tonight. Casey, how are we doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, and just for kind of our new listeners, or just the listeners overall, tell us who you are and how how this came to be, how we got together.
Yeah, so my name's Casey. I go by Grow With The Sport on Instagram and now TikTok, which I have gotten a little overly obsessed with. I'm a college student in Boston. I have been playing disc golf for 6 months now. And my journey kind of started when my boyfriend got me into playing a little bit, and I realized that all of the people I started following on Instagram were either touring pros or people who had been in the sport for a long time who were specifically making content, and I couldn't really find people who were at my level and being honest about the fact that they were at my level. And so I decided, okay, well, if it doesn't exist, I'll make it. And I started just kind of being honest about what I was up to and sharing my journey and the highs and lows and things that I expected, that I hadn't expected, and it has been a whirlwind of half a year. I have made it through the off season. I'm excited to start playing more in the spring and summer. I'm sponsored. It's been crazy to get to become so involved in this community so quickly and see all of the support and all of the people who are just excited about this sport. So I couldn't be more grateful for how quickly everything has grown and developed. And that's kind of where I'm at, seeing what the next step will be.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you say that a lot of people weren't necessarily being honest with their content. because that's definitely something that we kind of wanted to start this podcast for. Was, we the entire time have never said we are going to be the greatest disc golfers there ever were. That's never something that we are going to claim, and we want to be that show that allows those new disc golfers an avenue to get better. How can I learn? How can I understand what the heck these concepts even mean, and how can I develop my disc golf game? So that's something that we've always strived to do, and literally, I'll be the first one to tell you, I love posting. I feel like when we post on Instagram, our bad clips gets more likes and more engagement than the good clips. So I guess people like to see those bad clips just as much. But it's really interesting because you do see a lot of people trying to play off that they're the perfect disc golfer. They're the greatest disc golfer since sliced bread. They don't do anything ever wrong. We all miss putts. We all have bad drives. So I think that's really interesting way to get into disc golf for sure. And I might have missed this, but how long did you say you've been playing disc golf?
6 months.
6 months. So how do you go from not being in the sport at all to 6 months in getting sponsored already? That's so fast.
A big part of it was just reaching out to brands that I saw in the community that were doing cool things. And for me, it was, at least at the beginning, it was almost less about the product and more about the message that different companies were putting out. I really liked seeing companies that catered to beginners in the sport or catered to kind of the human aspect of the sport, which is specifically what drew me to Upper Park, or like mental health advocacy, which is why I work with Wander. And it's really cool to be able to reach out. And because the sport is still growing so quickly, I feel like you get a lot more real human interactions with companies and with people who are working in the sport who are either players or have a company or have a production or whatever the case may be. And my first experience with it actually was I reached out on Upper Park's like contact form on their website. And I just said, hey, I really like what you're doing. I like that your company isn't just about the product. It is about making good product, but it's also about encouraging people and growing the sport and things like that. And I just said, that's pretty cool. And I think I said, I actually don't have the money to buy a bag right now, but can't wait to be able to do that someday. And Martin, the CEO of Upper Park, emailed me back and he was like, this is awesome. Love what you're doing. Do you want us to send you a Rebel? And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then he kind of circled back this spring and he was like, well, actually, we'd love to add you to the team. So it really hasn't all been about applications to like sponsorships or things like that. It's really been more building connections with people that I've met in the community.
Definitely something that we have experienced and, noticed. I think we're still in a time, to people in disc golf is like the biggest thing ever. It's like, how do people not know about this? This is the coolest thing in the world. Like, how do you guys not play every day? Like, how do you not know about Jomez and watch videos every single day? But, like, people outside of it, like, it doesn't exist. It's still very, in kind of that growing form. It's still in baby stages. And so a lot of companies, a lot of brands, people, creators, they're growing and they're trying to grow. So they're very accessible, very easy to talk to, and they all want to help each other grow. And that's something that we've definitely been lucky with. Is just reaching out to companies or companies talking to us and been able to like, hey, like we have a podcast we just started. We've been doing this for about a year or so, and the company's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like we're also like just starting our own company, online on social media. It seems like, oh, this big company, they put out products, they have a warehouse or whatever. Like that just seems too, in the normal sense, that just seems like a company that you can't really interact with or reach out to. But, a CEO reaching back out to you to your email, that's pretty crazy. That just speaks to kind of the stage that we're in. And I feel like not enough people take advantage of that. I'm not saying, every time you send an email, someone's going to send you, one of their products or something like that, but you can definitely get to talking to them. And did that kind of motivate you, or I guess, push you forward to wanting to do more with the sport, like just kind of with your own brand?
Absolutely. I think experiences like that, and I'm not just saying in terms of the scope, like even when people reach out to me and they're like, hey, I really liked this video, whenever it's interactions that just feel genuine, that is what drives me to continue in this sport. And yes, I love the sport itself. It's so much fun and I love seeing improvement. But at the same time, I don't think disc golf would be anything without the people that are involved in it. And everyone is so kind, so genuine, and so excited to see other people grow and succeed. And so that experience was huge because right off the bat, I was like, oh, if this is the type of person that I'm going to be running into in this community, I just want to get more involved.
Yeah, definitely. Martin's a really good guy. I know when we were talking to him, we had a couple of one-on-one sessions for 35, 40 minutes, an hour, whatever it was. And yeah, definitely a really good guy. And I think it's one of those things where if you're a newer player, I mean, even Casey yourself, you're saying 6 months you've been in the game. If it's 6 months, 6 years, 60 years, however long you've been in disc golf, I think a part of it matters on who you are as a person. What are your morals? What do you stand for? Not necessarily are you going to shoot 18 down every single time, right? Because I can shoot 18 down every single time and I can be a prick out on the course and no one's going to want to work with me. But if I can shoot plus 18 and be a good guy and be a good ambassador, then people are going to want to work with me. So I think it's something that everyone can be a decent person, all right? Like we said on last episode, pick up your litter. I think that's where it all starts, okay? If everyone would pick up their litter, disc golf would be a better spot. But what I'm trying to get at here is that you have to be able to build those connections, build those relationships in order to even think you're going to get anywhere in the sport. I've heard plenty of guys and gals who are like, I've been playing for 3, 4, 5 years and I haven't even gotten sponsored yet. How did you get sponsored? It really is all about relationships. If you're listening to this right now and you want to get sponsored, you want to take your game to the next level and get sponsored, you really have to build those relationships. So Casey, I ask you, what are some tips for building those relationships? I feel like once you find one message, it's really easy to just take that message and copy paste and send that to as many brands as you possibly can and just see which ones come back. How should you actually work on networking with other people, companies, brands, whatever it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think by far the most important thing is to just be genuine and be real about what your experience has been. If you really like a brand and you've never had the opportunity to try their products, but you really want to, don't lie and say that you have. Just be honest about where you're at. I think that is the biggest thing because these people who run different companies, no matter what the area, this is not just disc golf related. This is with anything. They will get tons of messages and tons of emails wanting to be sponsored, wanting to work with them. I really believe that the way to stand out is to be really transparent, make it clear that this is not just a copy and paste message. This is something that you particularly respect about their brand, about them as a person, whatever the case may be, and have a conversation. Because at the end of the day, as much as you might want to get a certain sponsorship or a certain opportunity, these connections go way beyond that. And if you are coming into a conversation with the sole intention of getting that sponsorship and kind of saying whatever you have to say to get that, that is obvious from the other side of the conversation. But if you're coming in and being curious and asking questions about their experience and wanting to learn from them and wanting to give them your experience and things like that, that's where connections are fostered. And ultimately, that's where opportunities can come from when you develop those real connections with people.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people forget that there's a person, or someone behind that company or that brand. Quentin, he's on Team Disc Dot, and we talked to them, And they told us their story. He was like, yeah, like I don't remember if he quit his job or lost his job or was laid off or something like that. He's like, so I started this. I want to do this more. He's like, this is my baby. Like, this is my, kind of like my livelihood. I started this, and like this is my full career now, my business, and this is what's providing for my family. I'm just trying to keep this going. And people don't realize that, there's a person behind that, so just reaching out, hey, sponsor me. Like I have this many followers or I play really good, sponsor me. Instead of, getting to know the person, getting to know the company like you're talking about, I feel like that goes a long way because then not only, do they kind of believe in you, but you also build a relationship and it's kind of like, investment in that company. And because, we're as players, maybe you might develop quicker than some other players, or maybe you don't. But if you get to know them, even if you're not playing tournaments or not scoring well, they're gonna hang on to you. Like you're putting out videos, you're getting the name out there, you're giving a good message of what their company is, as opposed to someone that maybe they go from am to pro within a year because they just figure out the sport and they get super good and they're like, well, I don't really need you anymore, or like I got better sponsors to get, and so they just dump the smaller sponsors. So what would you say for people who I guess haven't quite realized that, and maybe they're improving their game, they're wanting to get sponsors, trying to improve their game, but they're not comfortable reaching out to companies, to brands. They're not comfortable, sending those emails or talking to people. Is there other ways of going about that? More local brands, more local people. What would you say?
Yeah, I think that the local route is absolutely valid if you are meeting people out on the course or during tournaments, during leagues, whatever the case may be, and you strike up a conversation and you realize that they're sponsored by a local brand. You can learn from their experience. Another thing is, this is kind of going back to the social media aspect, but if you really like a company, I see this a lot with disc manufacturers. If you really like a company, but you maybe don't have the capacity to reach out or apply for their team or whatever the case is, if you're sharing content about what you like about a brand, they notice. And that is something that I think a lot of people forget. Kind of going back to how we're talking about there is a person behind every brand. People notice when you are giving genuine feedback and you are giving a brand positive exposure. Additionally, if you're scared to send that initial message, a good conversation starter can sometimes be sharing something on your Instagram story and tagging them in it, because then it pops into their DMs and that can be kind of an easier conversation starter if you're a little intimidated to send the first kind of cold call message. But I think the local companies is also a really good point, particularly for people who are super involved in their local scene. So if there are areas where there's a big disc golf presence and you're around a lot and you're starting to meet a lot of the people, you will naturally get to know local companies. And as much as we're talking about connecting with people via social media, it's even easier to connect with people in person. And again, if you're real and you're honest with these people, then don't be afraid to say, hey, that's really cool that you're building this company. Do you know if you're going to offer any sponsorships, or do you know what that process will look like? Because then you're not just coming on to them and saying, sponsor me. You're still learning. And it's very possible that they say, no, we're not going to be taking on anyone. We're not going to be sponsoring anyone. But you're still learning more about their company and you're expressing interest. So maybe down the road, if someday they do start that program, you've already kind of set that in motion. So there's a million ways to get there. But I think at the end of the day, honest communication with people is at the core of everything.
Yeah, I really like that. And I also wonder then, once you get sponsored, what should you be doing afterwards to, I don't know, fulfill what you said you were going to do? Like, I feel like a lot of people, the big goal is to get sponsored. And then once you're sponsored, it's kind of like a, ooh, what do I do next? I never kind of thought I would get here. So, what do you do next after you did secure the bag and you got sponsored?
That is definitely a question that has a lot of layers. So for me, I have 4 different sponsors. I have very different obligations for each of them. And I say obligations because it's what is in my contract, but I have very different types of partnerships with each company. And some of them have social media requirements. Like I have to post on social media about their product or their company a certain number of times in a given time span, which is kind of easy for me because it's like, okay, here's a tangible goal that I have to meet. Some have specific promotions that they want me to participate in and work with them on. And again, that's a super set thing. So that's helpful to have. Then there are some where it's just kind of be a good ambassador of the brand. And that can be very abstract and very hard for people to gauge, okay, what's the right amount? What am I supposed to do? First of all, I was not afraid to ask at the beginning and just say, what do you expect? What do you see as success kind of in this role? Almost as if it's a job interview, even though it's not. But what ideally would you like to come out of this partnership? Because at the end of the day, it is a partnership. It's not just them sponsoring you, even though that's what it feels like a lot of the time, especially if you're not sponsored and you're looking to get sponsored. But it really is, you're working with a company. And so having a solid understanding of what they expect from you from the get-go is super helpful. If that is not there, if that definition is not there, or maybe even if it's a smaller company and they're kind of saying, well, I don't know what we need from someone we're sponsoring. I think the biggest thing is obviously representing the brand in a good light. So whether that's sharing content or whether that's making sure you're wearing their logo at tournaments, whatever the case is, that's kind of number one. Because at the end of the day, sponsorships are a marketing tool. And that's really all they are. But then the other thing is being a good person that people want to play with and that people want to work with. Because I have seen instances, obviously not going to name names, but I have seen instances where someone was being a really bad card mate or was being really rude, and people have gone to their sponsor and said, hey, I don't know if you want to have this type of person on your team representing your company. Which I think is a totally valid thing to do because, yeah, the company probably doesn't want that kind of person on their team. And ultimately, if someone doesn't have that conversation, it could put a very bad light on the company. If you're no fun to be around and you're making weird comments and things like that, because then it kind of goes back to, oh, well, why is that company working with them? Like, they don't seem like they're a great representative of the sport. So I think that's really important to remember, is there is kind of that added level of social accountability. And in general, I think that's a really good thing. But it's definitely not something you want to forget if you're starting to get sponsored or you've gotten sponsored. I think it's just important to keep in mind.
Sponsorships aren't everything, you guys. Some people, they get, especially pro levels or other levels, they get sponsorships to help them on tour, to help them pursue that dream they have. Others, more to help them maybe as a side hustle or stuff like that. But, if you're just a fan of the sport, if you enjoy playing, I wouldn't worry too much about sponsorships, like, oh, I'm improving or I'm better than that guy. why is he sponsored and I'm not, or her, or and seeing it like that as a justification for being good enough or whatnot. Sponsorships are great, but everyone has different goals. And for someone, sponsorships might not be the thing that you need. Maybe just focusing on your game. And I feel like sometimes they just come. Sometimes if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to be reaching out, or you don't know what to do, or you don't even know where to start, or who you would want as a sponsor, if you just focus on your game and you want to go pro, and you think you have the game and what it takes, just focus on what you can control, your game and improving, and they'll come to you. Like you said, they will notice. Just make sure you're posting stuff, playing tournaments, and the sponsorships, the companies, they will notice. But let's move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about you, kind of what you're doing. So you're creating content, you're sharing. So what does that look like, being honest about your game? I know we've talked here on our podcast, and I'm constantly telling people we are not great disc golfers. We are not pretending to be great disc golfers. We interview great disc golfers so that the listeners can learn, but ourselves, we are just, noobs in the sport, and we're trying to improve. And so we're definitely very honest about that. What does it look like for you, your content that you're doing, and teaching people or helping people? What are you doing on a daily or weekly basis?
The biggest thing has been sharing videos of shots, no matter how bad they are. That was especially true right at the beginning when I would go out and do field work, and I would probably throw a driver like 100 feet. And I would ask for honest feedback. Got a lot of that, which was not always fun, but it was hugely helpful. And now it also looks like uploading my scorecards, even when I'm really embarrassed of them. A huge thing that has become a, I guess, routine is I've been sharing my rating update every month. And when I got my first rating, which I think was November, I was 532 rated. And I think that is one of the lowest ratings I have ever heard of. And that's the reason I wanted to share it, because I knew that I was incredibly nervous going into my first sanctioned tournament because I knew it was going to be rated. And after my first round, I think my first round was in the 400s, and I was so embarrassed. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Do I even keep going? Like, this is just not a fun feeling. But that's why I wanted to share it, because I knew that if I was feeling like that, there are definitely other people out there feeling like that. And particularly something that's really important to me is I can absolutely imagine that there are young people out there feeling like that. And I am a child. I'm 21, but I have played with like 9 and 10-year-olds, and I've seen them sometimes get super in their head about a missed shot. And it's like, that is not the mentality that we want to foster, because it's so hard to get out of that mindset once you're there, in terms of, oh, this is going to be a bad rated round, or oh, this was a really bad shot. But the more we can share that this is a common experience, that everyone starts somewhere, the better. Like, the more information we're giving to people who are starting in the sport, and particularly, at least for my page, particularly kids and women who are starting in the sport. Because I know that my first ever experience with disc golf was I went out with my boyfriend and his college roommates, and I had 3 discs. I don't even remember what they were. One of them was like a nameless putter. I got so embarrassed because we were playing on like a pitch and putt course, and now I throw fine there. But when I was just starting and I didn't know what I was doing, I would throw like half as far as all of them. And so then I felt like I was holding them up. I felt like I was a burden. I felt like I wasn't deserving to be there, even though all of them were great and they were like, no, you're fine. It was still embarrassing. That's the biggest thing, is I know that a lot of women start playing with men, and it can be really hard when you don't have a reference point for how you're throwing or what the differences are or what you should expect if you're playing around with men. That was a big part of me building content and being real about my experience, was that I didn't want anyone else to feel how I had felt when I first started, because I didn't have anyone to look at as a reference point as a woman starting in disc golf. So that was definitely a big part of the motivation, and that's what I continue to try and do.
If you're someone in that position where you're feeling like you're holding up the card, you're feeling like you're not worthy of being out there, how do you go from feeling like that to being part of the group, not feeling that way, feeling good about how you're playing? Like, what kind of things can you do that will move you in that direction? Because it's obviously not going to happen overnight. You're not going to go from throwing 100 feet to 300 feet overnight. So how can you progressively move in that direction besides subscribing and listening to the Clankers Disc Golf podcast?
Wish that I could give just a cut and dry answer to that. I think one thing is, if it's kind of a set group of people that you're going out and playing with, just being honest with them about the stress that you might be feeling, saying, I'm worried that I'm holding you guys up. I don't want to be a burden on this group. If they're good people, which I hope are the people that you're playing with, then I'm sure they will be understanding, because again, we all start somewhere. Going out and kind of getting to know your game beyond the group is also really helpful. That was huge for me, learning how I throw and going out for a round with just me or me and one other person, and kind of getting those basics down and starting to understand better. Another thing that I have never done, but I feel like it would help, is if you're kind of more into disc golf for that social aspect, putting leagues would probably be a great situation for that as well, because there's less of that pressure to, well, there's none of that pressure to throw really far. That might be kind of a more neutral way to continue building your game, but still having that social aspect. Those are just a couple of the things that come to mind first, but again, I wish I had an easy answer to that, because that's a hard situation, and I've been there, and I wish that no one had to be there.
Yeah, another thing that I would maybe add is, here locally, one of the league nights we have is doubles. It's a doubles nights league, and it just came back yesterday. It's like Wednesdays, and it's super fun. It's like one of my favorite things to do. One, it's just the socializing, and you meet new people, and it's a different kind of game. It's not like tournament level. It's not just a casual round. It's somewhere in between. But I remember going out there, when I very first started, and I was not very good. And looking back at it, I was probably, one of those guys that was, kind of, just kind of bad shots, bad putting, just overall, not that great. But I never felt that way. Every time I had a partner, they're there because they want to play league night, they want to have fun, they want to meet, same reasons, and so they're never going to be rude to you. It's a random doubles, so you're going there with the knowledge that you can get someone who has been playing for 2 days, or someone that has been playing for 3 years and they're really, really good, and you guys are going to have a great night. But that's just kind of the chances you take. And I think I have noticed, from both sides, some people who maybe didn't have that welcoming experience, they were not that great, and they got maybe with a partner, they didn't do that well, and they felt kind of bad, not return. And I feel like I've also seen other people who got tired of playing with new players, people that weren't that great, and get partnered up and also not return. And so I feel like now, it's kind of the people that they're okay with whoever shows up, and we're here to have fun, we're here to play. But you learn a lot, and usually the partners I've had, especially when they're better than myself, they help you, they give you tips. Some of the best tips I've gotten and has helped me improve has been from some of those league nights doubles, people that have been playing longer, just giving you random tips, and not even like in a mansplaining kind of way, or just like trying to be better than you, what kind of way, just like hey, like, as a fellow disc golfer, I want to look out for you. I want to help out. I've been there. I've made those mistakes, and just kind of helping. Just about disc selection or other stuff like that. And I feel like it's a very good way, especially I'm very lucky, and I feel like most people are very lucky to have people that they can go out and play disc golf with. But if you just moved somewhere and you're new there, you don't know people, or you're just kind of person that doesn't have many friends, or like I was talking about, you're someone that discovered disc golf, but all your other friends or everyone else they have no idea about it, and they don't want to know. You're alone. You're by yourself. And so the only way that you can play with other people is going out to those league nights. So, that's one thing I recommend for people starting out and wanting to improve or wanting to make people or meet friends is go to those league nights, especially if there's like a doubles night. People should be very nice to you. And it's a great way to slowly get that tournament experience.
Yeah, and one thing I will add to that is, again, particularly for ladies and juniors, there are leagues and nights and things like that specifically for those groups. So I know for me, the first time I played on a card of all women was huge because just as you're talking about in terms of disc selection, in terms of just how to play and how to start learning more about how you throw and how to go through a course, it was amazing. It was so helpful. The concept of throwing a lighter weight, something I never would have figured out on my own. As someone who was just kind of stealing discs from my boyfriend's bag and throwing those and being like, oh, why do I suck? It's like, oh, well, I was not throwing the right discs for me at all. So I think that that's something as well that can help if you might be intimidated to go to a league where you don't know anyone. You could look specifically for a beginners league or a women's league or a juniors league or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. And I really do think getting out there and playing those leagues are also good. And also to tie that back to what we were talking about in the beginning, right? Like if you're looking to get sponsored, if you're not necessarily wanting to go out and DM a bunch of people or go up to the local shop owner and chop it up with, and then going out to leagues and being a good person, being a good, decent player, like all those kinds of things will only continue to help show why you should be sponsored or why you do deserve those kinds of things and how far you have come. All those different kind of, I guess, check boxes that people that would want to sponsor you can kind of mark off for you. So I think that's really, really good. But I am ready to jump into the hot take. So Casey, I gave you a little bit of a warning before we started recording. What do you got for us? What is your disc golf hot take?
I'll help you out. I am done. And this, I guess this is negative. I'm done seeing the
Yes.
James Conrad shot on every Jomez
Oh,
video,
thank you.
on Disc Golf
Yes.
Network, on everything. It's like
Yes.
every 15, 20 minutes, it's like, okay, cool, like we get it. He made the shot. But it's like, it won't stop. It doesn't go away. And, I'm ready for someone else to make an amazing shot so we can see that for the rest of the year or something because I'm done with seeing James Conrad's world champion
God,
shot.
yes.
That's my.
Thank you for bringing that up, Horatio. I was thinking that the last Jomez video that I had watched, I was thinking that. I'm so sick and tired of it. I get it. It's the greatest shot of all time in disc golf, but you are shoving it down my throat. I am tired of it, okay? I don't need it anymore. I get it. It went in. We saw how devastated Paul was. We saw how happy James was. It's over. It happened.
Okay, I'm ready with my hot take. Um, the FPO lead card is always more interesting to watch than the MPO lead card
Dang. Why? Go into more.
because I think the interactions between them are a lot more fun to watch. I think that, at least for me, their shots make more sense to me. So I'm able to understand their game plan better. And to me, that makes it more interesting to watch. Also, to be perfectly honest, I think more throws make for more interesting disc golf.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Watching Joe Mass coverage of MPO tournaments and stuff. It's like if it's a 3-part hole. This is for majority, I would say. There's few tournaments or few locations, but if it's a 3-part, you know that almost all of them are going to or should get a 2. If it's a 4, they're all going to get a 3, and so it's kind of very predictable. It's not predictable disc golf. You get a bunch of crazy shots, you get stuff that happens, but for the most part, yes, I kind of see what you're saying. It's like they're doing kind of repetitive. They all kind of do the same thing, and they all play similar styles, and it's yeah, I definitely get that. I will say there's more. I guess lately also for FPO, but MPO I feel like there's more variety as far as like who's on lead card. FPO for the longest it was just Katrina and Paige. This year, I feel like a lot more people are watching that coverage and watching the Disc Golf Network FPO because there's other contenders. Kristen Tatar and all the people from Europe, and it's definitely making it more exciting. So I'm glad that's back, and I'm glad that's a thing that's happening.
And you got to give a shout out to Val. Big win at Waco.
Yeah.
That killer shot on 17. I mean, the stones to go for that in that situation. Whew. I mean, my thought here is, I guess, that I agree to a certain extent that at least so far this year, FPO lead card final day has been a little bit more interesting. I also like watching disc golf that's not just complete runaway disc golf. So as fun as it was to watch Paul Macbeth win, I cannot be invested for 18 holes because it's over after hole 3, where Evelina had, a 4-stroke lead on everybody going into the round. It looked like it was done, and by golly, was it not very quickly. And then you see Kristen and Val fighting each other for the win all the way up until 17, and then all Val has to do on 18 is not have a collapse, and she was going to win. Yes, I agree. I think that was so entertaining. You look the week before, Kat and Paige were battling it out till the very last hole as well. So far in 2022, we've seen very exciting FPO coverage, and I think that it's going to continue to lead more people into wanting to watch FPO and just learn more about those players, and I think that's good for disc golf overall.
I will also give the disclaimer that, of course, I only got into disc golf 6 months ago. So it's not all I've seen, but it's the main content that I've seen has been from the start of this season. And I also think, I was just thinking about this as you guys were talking, I think that part of it, honestly, is that I feel like I know the FPO players more. Because I think that they share more about kind of who they are in their life touring and stuff on social media. And so I feel like I have a better understanding of them as people. And so I think that's also why I'm more invested in who's going to win and kind of how are the dynamics changing and things like that.
Yeah, Paige is very good about that. I love Paige Pierce. She's the GOAT of FPO, and she's been having, last season she had, a couple, she was having kind of a tough time, and I feel like this year she's having a hard time getting started, but she's very good at opening up her personal life, her YouTube videos, now doing the podcast. She is a super generous person as far as knowledge and information, wanting to grow the sport and teaching people what she knows, how she does it. And so I completely get that. She's one of the few just disc golfers in general that I do watch on YouTube regularly because, she puts out not just entertaining videos, but she's that kind of friend that does everything to the extreme or to like as best possible. Her YouTube videos are just insane. Just the amount of, and it shows why she's, the best FPO player. She does everything as best as possible, 100%. Her videos, like just the detail, the editing, everything is just amazing. And so I completely get that. You have a lot of, guys on the MPO side who I feel like are kind of lazy. They're like, oh, I'm just a great disc golfer. I'm rated, 1090, whatever, 1050. I don't have to put effort into, people are going to watch my videos. And they just put out, just okay videos. Don't put that much time and effort into them. They're like, people are gonna watch them anyways because of my name. And Paige Pierce, she is a huge name in the sport, and she still puts so much time. So I really, really love that about her.
Well, hey, I think that was a good hot take. We got 2 hot takes for the price of 1 in there, so that was pretty fun, I guess. But Horatio, how about you transition us into the ace round for those newer listeners? Maybe give a quick explanation of what it is, and let's get it going.
Yep, so these are just the same questions we ask every single guest we have on the show, just to kind of give variety, give players an idea of, inside of everyone's mind. First question we got for you here is, you're taking a new player, a friend, to get their first set of discs. You're tired of them losing yours, taking yours out of the bag. They want their own. You want to let them fly. What 3 discs are you recommending to them?
I recently switched to a soft roach for putting, and I would absolutely recommend that to anyone. That came out of my mouth, and I immediately regretted it because I was thinking through my bag. No, scratch that. Okay, 3 discs: Fierce, Comet, and Thrasher. Long answer to a short question.
No, that was good. I think those are all really good. We know Horatio loves Discraft, so he loved all those answers right there for sure. Let's get to the second question, right? What is the favorite course you have played and one course you want to play in the future that you have yet to play?
Favorite course that I've played is Maple Hill, and course that I want to play but haven't yet is Hornet's Nest in Charlotte.
Sweet. Perfect. All right. Next question we got for you here is, I know you said a couple times, you've only been playing 6 months, who cares? We've only been playing for now 2 years, and it's flown by. And I feel like a lot of players, have been playing for not that very long either. And there is a few, but hopefully, it doesn't become a norm, especially, but they're just people being gatekeepers of the sport and being like, oh, you're not allowed to have an opinion, or you're not allowed to tell people what you think about so and so because you've only been playing for this long. You weren't around when Paul Macbeth was dominating. Blah blah blah. Like, who cares? It's just very annoying. I saw one thing on Twitter or someone. They're like, "Yeah, I'm tired of getting opinions from 700 rated players." Blah 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 blah. And it's just, I bet you that person was not that much better anyway. But I'm just saying that because I've heard say that a couple of times, and it doesn't matter. Like you said, like, the reason we're talking to you is because we want to tell people that everyone starts somewhere, and it's just a matter of where you go from here to, in a year or so where you're at. Some people, maybe they've been playing for, I know a lot of people that I've met that have been playing for 4 or 5 years, and they just played kind of fun, whatever, nonchalant disc golf, and they're not that good because they didn't take it very serious. And you have players who have been playing for a year, they got hooked, and they took in as much information as possible, and they wanted to improve as much as possible, and they're better than that person that has been playing for 5 years. So time has nothing to do with it. It's just a matter of, like, how much you love it, what you're doing it for. But the question is, one tip you would give to yourself who just started playing disc golf.
Don't be afraid to throw mid-ranges when everyone else is throwing drivers. Yeah, that was huge for me at the beginning. I would throw drivers because I thought I was supposed to, and once someone actually told me, they were like, you need to stop throwing drivers. Like, you need to start throwing mids because you are brand new to the sport and you need to pause and, like, get your form together first. Not saying my form is all the way together, but at least start working on it first. So if I could go back to, like, the very beginning and just take all of the drivers out of my bag, I would.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. A lot of what I'm trying to say here is, if you like that tip, listen to our episode with Joel Freeman. I know I've said that in the past, but Joel Freeman was very good about how you can condense down your bag and kind of take out those discs that you're not using. And I agree. I think that, especially if you're newer to the game, focus in on those mid-ranges, work those mid-ranges, get them to move on the angles you want them to move at, and then kind of start working your way up the ladder. I definitely know that if I could go back to when I first started, I would have spent much more time with my mids than trying to figure it out now and getting frustrated because I kind of am set in my way and I have to periodically, continuously work at it. But that's a really good one. I like that. Fourth question we have for you. What is your favorite memory playing disc golf so far?
Actually, this might be recency bias, but I think yesterday or 2 days ago, I got really, really close to beating my boyfriend in a practice round for the first time. And that was huge for me. I just had a moment of like, oh, like I'm actually starting to figure this out. Like this feels good. It was just a moment of realization of like, hey, I can do this. Like I'm actually improving. And that was awesome. And it was at a course that I had played. I think my first ever round of disc golf was at that course. So it was just this moment of like, oh my gosh, like how has this all happened so quickly? It was just, oh, it was a great feeling.
Yeah, I think one of the most addicting things about disc golf is just improving and, seeing yourself get better. All right, last question we got for you here is, what is the biggest mistake you see new players make?
I mean, I think I kind of already said this, but throwing discs that aren't the right discs for them, or throwing discs because they see other people throwing them. It's so easy to fall into, especially if you have someone who brought you into disc golf, to just throw what they throw. But if you take a minute right at the beginning and go into a store or talk to a pro or whatever the case is, whatever your situation is, and just say, hey, I'm brand new, this is my situation, and you're able to kind of have more comfort with specific discs and know that you are throwing the discs that are most able to help you as you improve. I think that's huge. And I see it all the time. Honestly, especially with women whose partners or male friends brought them into the sport and they just throw whatever they have. Like I did it. I've already said I did it, but I see it a lot, and I think it can be very damaging not only to your game but also your mentality about disc golf, because it becomes so much easier to just see more missing shots and think, oh my gosh, it's because I'm bad at disc golf. No, it's because you have the wrong disc in your hand.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's a very good piece of advice that everybody can take away from this episode and try to implement into their game. Casey, it was a blast having you on the podcast today. Where can the people connect with you on social media and continue to follow your disc golf journey?
So I am Grow with the Sport on Instagram and TikTok. No periods or dashes or anything like that. And yeah, that's where you can find me. I am delighted to have been here today, and thank you guys so much. I can't wait to see what the podcast does next, and yeah, and you guys as individuals, I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Hopefully less bogeys.
Same.
That's all we want.
Funny guy.
All right, well, thank you so much, Casey, for coming to talk with us tonight, taking the time out of your day. College student is definitely a tough time, a busy time, and I see why you found disc golf. It's definitely therapeutic, easy to get out there. But best of luck to in college and life, and just improving. Hopefully, you beat your boyfriend here pretty soon. Let us know when you do. That's very exciting stuff. But thanks again, and best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Chain Clankers podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers, and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us from so you never miss another episode.